Hi Vivek, are you able to?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Vivek, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Snehmai. Kiran
Okay,
is also joining, I guess. Kiran, are you there? I think he's joining. Yeah,
he'll join. So I'm the volunteer assigned for your session. So I will not speak much. Yeah, hi Vivek, hi Kiran.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm Snehamai and I'm the session volunteer for this session. As soon as we start, what I'm planning to do is I will just quickly say this is Vivek, this is Kiran, and they're going to talk about this topic and hand it over to you because the sessions are very small. I don't want to take too much of time over introduction. You may want to introduce yourself
okay.
the way you feel. Second thing, how do you want me to help you with the time commitment? uh, can I post a message in the chat? There is a chat for the session. You know where it is, right?
Yeah.
There's a chat for the session. So 10 minutes before the end, I will ping you saying 10 minutes warning. Because if I suddenly switch on my video, no, it distracts everybody else.
Correct.
So that may not be a wise idea. Third thing, what I wanted to talk with you was questions will be coming in this. I'll ask people to put the questions in the session chat, and towards the end, I'll ask so that you don't have to keep on reading the sessions as you you know. So, any questions you have?
No, I'm clear. Thanks for volunteering to help us.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, we have 3 minutes.
We
Vivek, you
have
have
read.
something for me? Anything? Yeah. So I've kept the videos and PPT ready. I think that's all.
You know how to share?
Yeah, I can.
There is this box below which will allow you to share.
Yeah, I'll just share just to test it. I guess you guys can see my screen now.
No, not really.
Not
We
yet.
can see your screen. Yes. So a couple of more minutes and we'll get started.
Yeah.
Kiran, is there a light facing you? You look a little maybe lighting. Otherwise, it's okay. I was just telling. It's fine.
It's okay, yes.
You're able to hear me, right?
Yes, Vivek.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think people have started to join. Yeah, he's Vinod. He's our second volunteer. I
Hi,
just
Vinod.
had.
Hi Kiran, hi Vivek.
So I
Thank
guess
you.
it's time. Let us start. Hopefully you enjoyed the session with Roman. So there we saw a people aspect of Agile. Now here we are with a session on the technical agility on XP and DevOps. So for that, I have got two people, Vivek as well as Kiran. We have somebody who has written a book, so I don't want to talk too much. and take up time. I'll let it over to them. So, Vivek and Kiran, over to you. Before we go, anybody who has questions for Ashish and I'm sorry, for Vivek and Kiran should post them into session chat so that towards the end we can ask them our questions than preparing with the questions during the sessions. So over to you, both of you. I'm just going to switch off my session.
Okay. Thank you very much, Snehamai. Kiran will be sharing his screen now. We have a typical PPT, but we will talk. We will not just read from the PPT, we promise. I will just wait until he shares the screen. So if you want to take a look at the screen share, you might have to double click on what Kiran has shared. That way you will see the slides that he's presenting. So let's get started. My name is Vivek Ganesan. I'm an Agile and DevOps coach. So I'll go to the introduction a little bit later. And I have here with me my mentee and a good friend, Kiran Kashyap. So we both are, people who share ideas very frequently about not just Agile, but also about a lot of things, including philosophical banter. What we are trying to do here today is we want to show some things to you and also pick your brains on some topics which are like buzzwords in today's Agile world. So there is a buzzword called XP, there is a buzzword called DevOps, and there is another word called technical agility. So we sort of wanted to see how we can integrate these three things, or compare and contrast these three things using a demo, using a sample application, and all these things. So we will get to introducing ourselves. So my name is Vivek Ganesan. I am the author of a book named Blameless Continuous Integration. I currently run a company named Ampiard, and we are working on a product called FaceQuest. So I am a hands-on coder. I fixed some bugs in our product today. So that is about me, and I am also consulting as an Agile and DevOps consultant. I have been doing this DevOps and Agile consulting for like past 2 years now. And over to you, Kiran. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hello all. Good evening and good morning. So I'm Kiran, and I'm currently serving as a Scrum Master at Lowe's. So yeah, that's my introduction. So let's start. Let's start by introducing our team. So let's say we have a agile team. They follow Scrum, right? And they have all the Scrum values. They they respect each other. They have courage, and they have short iterations like Scrum says. And they also do great demos. And the PO is also very happy seeing the demo. But we are not able to ship it to the customers, right? So we are following almost whatever on the cultural aspect of the Scrum, or the people aspect of the Scrum. But even though we are doing all these things properly, we are not able to ship it to the customers. What do you guys think? What may be the problem here? We can just chat there. I mean, put it in the chat. What do you guys think the problem is? And I mean, you can throw whatever ideas you have. So this is the question. So we have a team, and they are following Scrum. They do iterations. They do the demo properly, and the PO is also very happy with the demo. They respect each other, but they are not able to release it at every sprint. Okay. Okay. Nice answer, Pallavi. Okay, manual blinds, CI/CD, proper release management. Great. So I think you guys have mostly covered it. So I would like to categorize into highly two problems there. So one is not confident to release to the customer. Why we are not able to? Why we are not confident is because we are afraid that it might break something else, right? That is the most. That is what we are afraid of, and another reason is we need a lot of additional steps. We need an approval from admin, and we need a release date. We need to take a lot of approvals, and there are a lot of steps putting into release. Even though we are ready to ship it to the customer, we know this brings value.
I can see some of the comments that you guys have put, right? Including additional step could mean, another round of testing as well, which is very common.
Yeah.
We all see that, right? And sometimes it could be, lack of confidence. That is why this another round of testing comes. So this another round of testing, which we know has pinged, falls into both of these categories. Whereas there is one input around developing features than stories, all are WIP. That is directly falling under need for additional steps because they are not features, and no proper release management. It's a broader problem, but yes, this could mean that people are not confident to release, and there may be some other steps that are required. CI/CD is precisely the additional steps, and manual builds and deployments consuming loads of time. That is the second category, and there is an answer around no automation test to ship faster and no CI. And there is one more answer around seriousness about understanding the definition of increment. So, so basically, what we are seeing here is no matter whichever problem you face or whichever answer people give. So, if you go to this Scrum team that we just presented and ask them, "Hey, you are doing all these things right, but why aren't you able to ship?" And any answer that they give, including the answers that you guys have given, will fall in under any of these two categories, one or both of these categories. That's the point that we are trying to make here, right? Over to you, Kiran.
So yeah,
So
I mean, yeah, Vivek, you can continue.
yeah, so maybe I'll continue rather. So the point is, these are the two problems. One is confidence, and another one is additional steps are there, and that is not included in the team's work. So solution to this specific problem, right? It comes from generally three different fields, right? It can come from three different fields. So what we have for generally when we talk about agile transformation or agile transformation as a broader philosophy, not only in India but also abroad, what we see is there is a huge focus on process transformation. Okay, we were doing these processes. Now we will change that into these new processes, and we will become agile. So we will be able to, do better things for the customer. But the underlying problem that we see is that just by changing the processes, right, we will not be able to do much because it will not reach prod. Right. So if you want to change the processes and also put things into production, these three areas are important, right? So these three areas where sometimes some of these predate the word called agile. Some of these came after agile as a word became popular. But all these three concepts or broader philosophical areas help us in actually putting the software to production rather than just talking about it or doing demos or just doing sprints and not doing much about it, right? So let's dive deeper and try to understand what each of these three things mean before going into the demo that we have created for you. So first, I will explain what is XP for you. So can anybody try attempting what is XP? Maybe in the chat window. What is XP? Extreme programming. Okay. What is so extreme about it? Pair programming. Yes. Any other input? We'll take maybe some more inputs and then talk about it. Okay, so if you can go back to the slides, Kiran. So XP stands, as you guys said, for extreme programming, right? And its core, why it is called extreme program is, take one good programming practice, any programming practice which people generally consider as good, take that and take it to the extreme level. Right? Example: some people told about test-driven development, and some pair programming also came. So let's take this formula and try to find out a test-driven development is a XP practice, right? So what you do is, okay, is testing a good programming practice? Everybody would say yes, testing is a good programming practice. Now what you do, take that good programming practice and take it to the extreme level of not writing even a single piece of code until you write your tests, right? That's pretty extreme, right? So XP stands on the basis of take any good programming practice and if there was a dial it up to all the way to 100%, so that it becomes the more extremist point of that particular practice, and you basically try doing that in order to get some benefits. Same goes for continuous integration as well. Is integration a good practice? Yes, we need to integrate all our code before giving it to customer. It is a good practice. Now what you do, take that small integration piece and take it 100 notches higher and say, I am not going to do anything which is not extreme. As in, take the same integration practice, but instead of integrating just before giving it to the customer or 2 weeks before giving it to the customer, I am going to integrate every single change into the mainline. Now that is continuous integration. So I'm, instead of integrating once in a week or once in a month, I'm going to integrate on a continuous basis. That is the extreme that we are talking about. So XP contains practices like TDD, continuous integration, and all these nice buzzwords that you see in the market. So this is basically a very high level philosophical explanation of extreme. Now you guys know where the extreme came from, right? Take one good practice, take it to the extreme. That's why it's called extreme programming, right? Okay. Can you move to the next slide, Kiran? Okay. Now comes the other devil called DevOps. Now this is also a very big field, and there are a lot of confusions around what this is, and not anybody agrees with. No, there is no single definition for DevOps, right? Partly it is because DevOps, does not have an official definition. How much ever people try to, because the person who initially created uh, maybe we can start taking some examples of what do you think DevOps is. Anybody? Can you type in the chat window? A mindset like agile. Very good. What do other guys think? What comes to your mind whenever somebody says DevOps? Automation process. Yes. Enables more transparency. Deliver faster to customer. Collaboration between development and ops team. Iterative processes automated. Development and operations a single chain. CI/CD, software delivery in a collaborative with it. So the interesting thing is, not everything is the same. If you see here in this same chat room, right, we have so many different definitions for what is DevOps. And this is just a sample size of the real world. If you go to the real world, there will be even more definitions. So not everybody agrees. That much is clear on what enjoying Friday nights without waiting for deployment. I love that, right? Some Srinivas gave this explanation of enjoying Friday nights without waiting for deployment. Are you trying to say that we are taking away your Friday night by this conference? I hope not, but that's okay. Let's deal with it one by one. So the point is, let's go to the next slide, Kiran. So we do not have a official definition of DevOps as well, but what we think is a guideline on whether something is DevOps or not, that we can give you. The guideline is simple. There is some homework I will give for you. I will wear the teacher hat. Google for 3 ways of DevOps. You can do this after the talk also. Now, there are 3 ways. If you see the first way, system thinking. Second way, there is something called amplify feedback loops. And third way, culture of continuous implementation, experimentation and learning. So anything that fits in any of these 3 ways, you can call that as a DevOps practice, tool, or philosophy. Okay, anything that does not do any of these things. For example, taking taking the status of where the work is every 1 hour. Where does it fit? It does not fit anywhere. So it is not a DevOps practice. Whereas when you talk about a practice like continuous delivery, what does it do? It basically makes sure that as and when a developer commits code, it basically goes through the ops chain and also goes to the customer. So anything, any practice or any tool that helps you to do anything in these 3 ways, you can consider it as DevOps. That is how I generally try to solve the fight between all these people having different definitions of DevOps. That is one. Okay, now go to the third big loaded word that came in the title. Can you go to next slide, Kiran? What is technical agility? Same procedure, guys. What do you think is technical agility? In the chat window. Entire project management at one place from start to end. Okay. This is a topic which people get confused about. So maybe, okay, adapting to flexibility of scope change. Yes, technology adapting to rapid changes. Challenge technical comfort zone. Very nice. Innovation. We'll take a few more inputs before we go further. Agile enough to do scope change as well as to develop, test, requirements grooming, etc. Not stuck in legacy, scaling technology on demand, more automation, scalable design, agile engineering practices and DevOps practices, keeping lower technical debts. Nice. Being flexible to adapt technology and engineering practices. Nice. So a lot of definitions came, right? Again, technical agility is also a new kid in the block, right? As in, like, now people are talking about it. There is even a technical agility conference. There is a technical agility is a part of, there is a team and technical agility section in the SAFE. So scale agile framework, yes. So they have this technical agility is the new kid in the block, and everybody seems to be talking about it. And this also sounds suspiciously similar to the DevOps and XP areas, right? So we wanted to clear that air as well. What is technical agility? So before we dive into technical agility, what is agility? Right? Agility is nothing but responding to changes. Right? It is not a process. It is not anything else. If you see, agility is nothing but responding to changes. Right? So something external happened, and my business should not go down the drain because of that external change. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that my business also changes so that it stays afloat. That is agility. Now, business agility is basically that any external change happen, for example this COVID situation, right? And our businesses, many of us are working from homes nowadays, and our companies, some companies had problems, some companies did not have problems, but they somehow made sure that we are still able to work and the business is still not affected, or affected to a smaller extent. How did they do it? Because of a multiple things, right? So business agility is nothing but ability of a business to respond to changes. That's it. Now, where is technical agility is every business system, right? It nowadays every system, every business is an IT business. Every business is a technology business, right? Even if you are a person who is selling, food online, this online becomes a difficult part, and that becomes a technology part. So, business agility always needs, right? What does it need? It needs something known as agility in your technology or technical agility in the underlying teams, right? And what technical agility now means is nothing but ability of IT to change so that business can change, right? So this is basically the explanation of what technical agility is. So any practice that helps you to change that that helps you to change IT so that business can change fast comes as technical agility. Example, is CI/CD a technical agility practice? Yes, because it helps us to change IT in very short cycles very quickly as and when a developer changes something. So it is a technical agility practice. So I'll just do a quick summary of these three things. First thing that we spoke about is XP, extreme programming. What it means? Take a good programming practice and crank it up 100 notches or take it to the extreme and try to see what happens. That is extreme programming. And that has some practices, TDD, CIA, all these things come from there. Second buzzword is DevOps. DevOps is development and operations. Anything that tries to bridge the gap between development and operations and makes them as a cohesive team instead of different people fighting against each other. That is a DevOps. There we spoke about three ways of DevOps, right? Screen is blacked out. Okay. Okay, it looks like some specific problem. I think volunteers will take care of it probably. Okay, fine. And third thing that we spoke about is technical agility, and technical agility is nothing but ability to respond to changes so that the business can change. These are the three aspects, right? And we go further from there.
So in this session, what we are trying to reach is we'll try to speak about some of the aspects, some practices or some aspects of XP, DevOps, and technical agility. We might not have time to go in deep of on any of these topics, but we'll try to cover the topics which are not mostly spoken about, right? And maybe later we can discuss more about three ways of DevOps if we have time, right? So let's try to discuss one of the topic here, least spoken about topics. That is called test pyramid. Right? I think some of you might have already heard about it, but let me introduce this concept to you. So on a high level, we can categorize tests into 3 or 4 types, right? What kind of tests it is? One is unit test, right? Unit test is something which tests the smallest piece of code, or sometimes it is called as the smallest unit in your code, and these kind of tests are called unit tests. And then there are something called as integration tests. Integration tests are something which tests how your units integrate together, and we have separate tests for that, and we call it integration tests. And the another category is end-to-end tests, or we also call it as acceptance tests or selenium tests, and these kind of tests fall into this category. And all these tests can be automated, right? And there are another kind of tests which is manual exploratory test or just manual tests. So why we do manual tests is because there are some kind of functionality or code which we cannot actually test automated. We have to do it manually. For example, the colors of the buttons, or how the buttons, or how the things are aligned in your UI, and yeah, these kind of things we can categorize into manual exploratory tests.
So just one thing to add here is all the things except for the top one, manual exploratory test, are automated tests. And in the top we have, if you see, very less manual exploratory test, and these are the things that only a human can test. Other people, even if you want, even if you have a lot of budget, it doesn't make sense to test. For example, if you want to check if the color of a button is blue, right, you can actually do that in Selenium to go and see what hex code is there in the HTML element and all these things. But the problem there is that it does not make sense, because what we want to know is how the human perceives it. Second thing, like Kiran told, is alignment. You can actually find out, okay, how much pixels difference is there between this one and then there is another button, how much is the pixel difference. But that is not the point of testing. That is too technical, and that does not serve any purpose. What we want is, it presentable to a human being? Can human being use it or not? So those kind of things always go into manual exploratory test, right? That's just a point I wanted to add.
Yeah. So let's have a discussion here, or let me put a question to you guys. So why do you think this is pyramid, and why not rectangle or square or some other shape? So why do you think it's a pyramid? Anyone? Complexity increases. Okay. It all leads to one product. Cool. Broader unit test. Time and effort. Yes. Scope varies.
So even if it is bottom up, right, it can be like, why not 3 rectangles stacked on top of each other? Why should the area go down over when as you go up? That's the question that Kiran is trying to ask.
It's the size of tests, expense of testing. Yes. Okay. Let's try to see why is it a pyramid and not not any other shape. So one is it's just the number of tests. So if you see here, we need to have more number of unit tests, and lesser number of integration tests, and even lesser number of end-to-end, and as less manual tests as possible, because this is the area where we can have more number of errors. The more we can automate, the better. And why we need to have more unit tests and and very less end-to-end tests, we'll try to understand.
Can we ask that to the audience, maybe? Okay.
Okay. Okay, I'll reveal the answer. Yeah. So, okay, one reason why we need more number of unit tests is because unit tests, we can run it in our developer environment itself, and it's pretty fast. For example, in end-to-end test, let us take the example of Selenium. So what it does, it launches the browser, and then it enters all the fields, and then it clicks on the login button, and then it does some actions. So to do all these things, it takes a lot of time. But on the other side, to run unit tests, you don't need a browser to launch, or you just need a developer environment, and it's done pretty fast. Right? Anybody have any questions there? So, and another main reason why we need to have more number of unit tests is because it's cheaper. Like I already told, end-to-end test to run, we need to have a browser, we need to have a separate machine where we can run our Selenium tests, and we need to maintain it regularly. On the other hand, unit tests are very cheap because you don't need to have a separate test suite, and and it can be run through developer environment itself, and you don't need a separate environment where you have to deploy all the unit tests and tests. So this is where we need to have more number of unit tests, and it also helps in maintaining for a longer term. So as we go on putting more number of features, and if we try to have a lot of end-to-end tests, it becomes really difficult for us to test each and every time. If we have end-to-end test, if we have more number of unit tests, so it's easier for us because we can test faster. So if you guys see the three ways of DevOps, the third way, the second way, we need to have the feedback faster. So feedback faster, what I mean is we can get the feedback fast whether any of our functionality is failing or not through unit tests.
One more aspect of this is, right, in a regular developer's life cycle, the unit tests go right into his development workflow, right? As and when he writes code, typically people, before they commit or they check in, they run these unit tests to see, whether things are fine or not. And then, integration may be happening, in a CI server, and then end to end maybe something that runs maybe once in a night, or something like that. And manual exploratory tests are the last, just before giving it to the customer, you have a manual look just to check everything is fine or not. That is manual exploratory test. That is point number one. And the second thing is how you approach this problem. It's good. It's a concept is good. You have some unit integration end to end, right? One thing to note here is that these are not hard and fast definitions, right? Here we have 3 layers, but in your code, in your application, if you go and see, it may even be 100 layers. It may be 10 layers. Okay, we are not going to nitpick on what is integration, what is end to end. We know these 3 extremities exist, and what we want to do is we basically want to try to create a concept around it. What we want is anything that runs slow, there should be very less of that. Anything that runs fast should be more of that. That is fun. And second thing is, when we talk about this, what do you call, if I have to explore, or if I have to write a test, right, I will try to write it at the lowest possible level. Any scenario, I will first try to write a unit test. If I cannot write it as a unit test, then only I will write it as an integration test. If I cannot write it as an integration test, then only I'll write it as an end-to-end test. So I will always go from the bottom of the pyramid to the top as and when I'm trying to write the tests. That's one, right? And there is one question that came in, as in, like, why are we calling it exploratory test? Why not just manual test? It's not organized. Yeah. So manual tests, when we, okay, why we call it exploratory test is that it is not a planned test. That's fun, because people generally explore by using the product and see whether things are work or not. So this is not a planned test, as you say, right? It's not organized. But when you say manual, what we are afraid of is basically, anything that they did not have time for, right? You don't want to plan those tests, right? These are explicitly unplanned manual tests. That's why we call it manual exploratory test. When we just say manual test, then what we have experienced is people just try to write a lot of test cases and just call it manual tests and go off with it. That is fun. And another insight that we have is any team that you see which transition from waterfall to agile, or transition from non-DevOps to DevOps kind of environment, will have an inverted pyramid. Most of their tests will be manual, and somebody would have come and said, okay, let's do Selenium. So many Selenium tests will be there, but very less unit tests will be there. You will see an inverted pyramid whenever you see a organization which is transitioning from legacy to new ways of work. And we as consultants, like for example, I'm a consultant, I go and help teams in technical agility. My whole job is to invert the pyramid, right? Help them invert the pyramid from inverted test pyramid to actual test pyramids. That's my job, right? That's another aspect. And Okay, we have some time. I think we can take this question. Only one question. How coverage is mapped for this test? I mean, done definition. Done definition depends on the team. We don't have to. But the idea is that it should cover the aspect, quality aspects, so that the product is working fine and the customer does not suffer. But otherwise, coverage. Test coverage is okay, but code coverage is not a very good metric to look for. Maybe we can talk about it once we go further, right? That's one. Can we go further? Yeah. So what we have created, this is where the demo part actually comes. We promise that we will show a demo in the title, right? So all the theory part is basically leading up to this demo. So what we have created, can you open that application? We have created a very sample and a simple application, which is called a flip card. So we generally use it in retrospectives, right? Kiran uses it in retrospectives very frequently in his organization. So it's nothing but, in order to get insights out of people, we seed some questions, right? So maybe you can pause, maybe I can explain and then you can play that. Is that okay, Kiran? Yeah. So what we do is we key in a question and then add it, and it just adds a question to this card. So when I go to the team in the retrospective, no card is open. Every card is closed like this, right? Can you play? And when I go to the team, when the retrospective happens, I ask people to choose a number randomly. So somebody says 3, I'll click on card 3 and the question is revealed and they have to answer the question, right? Typically, we try to keep this, if you're doing icebreakers, the kind of questions will be different. If you're doing actual retrospectives, kind of questions will be different. This is a very simple application, right? Now, what we have done is, for this application, we have an open source code shared with you. We will give you the GitHub link at the end of this talk. But in addition to that, we also have the test pyramid already written for this, right? So that demo we wanted to show to you. So can you open that unit test API? So there are two layers in this conceptual layers. One is API layer, another is UI layer. So we have created a test for, this is a UI unit tests. So unit tests we have written at the UI layer because we have a React front end, right? So I am running a npm test command, and this is going to find out all tests in my code. And this is React, so React script test gets called, and then it's going to give me whether something worked or not, right? It has basically three test suites with 4 tests. And when you go to the open source repository that we give you, you can actually try it out in your own system, right? So this is basically the demo of a UI unit test. If you see, unit is at the bottom and we should have more tests in that, right? So UI is just one part of the unit. Now we can go to API unit test. Can you run that as well? Yeah. So API also, I have a backend based on Node.js again. So that is also an NPM. So I'm running again the NPM local unit test, right? Since I'm running it in my local, it basically tries all these local unit tests and gives me a report. So what we have demonstrated so far, the bottom of the pyramid, where UI is also having its own units, API also has own units, right? And there may be some other service that we are calling that is also having their own units. Now what we do, we take all these units and write separate tests for them, which means we have to run them separately, but all of them come under the same category called unit, which is at the bottom of the pyramid. Okay. Now let's go into integration tests. That is another demo. So you see, there is another video for integration tests. So again, integration test, what I'm trying to test is I'm going to call the API and see whether the API gives me the proper response or not, based on this Flipkart application that you just saw, right? So I'm running a local integration test. It will call the API and see whether the API response comes or not, and it passes. So if you see, we have only 2 API tests here. So 6 unit tests and 2 integration tests. This is our statistics so far. We are basically having a pyramid sort of. 6 in the bottom, 2 in the middle, and the third thing that you will see is end-to-end test. That's the another part of the demo that we have, right? So this is basically a Selenium based code that we wrote in .NET so that it opens a browser and checks for some conditions and closes. So it basically checks the high level flow, end-to-end flow. So we are just trying to run the end-to-end test now. And it opened a Selenium, it opened a Chrome browser, it tries to add a card and see whether the card got added or not, right? And then it finishes. So we basically have a happy scenario, which is for higher level. So what we have effectively created is a a test pyramid with some tests in the unit level, some test in the integration level, and some more test in the unit level. Of course, we will also have this. I know the UI looks ugly, but there is a good version of this code which is not ugly. That is also there. That is also taken care of using the manual exploratory tests, right? And when we talk about these tests, right, one thing that I want to address is people generally go behind code coverage as a metric. Code coverage is nothing but, okay, how much I have written 10 lines of code, how many of these 10 lines of code are touched by the tests when they are running. That is the code coverage. If all the 10 lines are touched by the test, it is 100% covered. If 5 lines are covered out of 10, it is 50% coverage. But the problem is there are multiple ways of cheating into actually writing tests which cover 10 lines but without testing anything. Every test should check something, assert. Expected is this, actual is this. That should be there. In my career, I have seen a lot of tests, particularly when you force the 100% code coverage or 60% code coverage into the teams. Teams go into this bad habit of writing a test without a test. It will be test. It will be run in the test suite, but it will actually not check anything. There will be no assert statements. There will be no expected and actual. They'll just call the code, which will anyway cover all the lines that you have written in the source code and finish it. So if you are a person or if you have a team which is too much insistent upon code coverage as a metric to see whether people are writing tests or not, people are writing tests, that is all it can confirm, but it will not come and tell you whether they are writing good tests or not. Good tests are a totally different metric that comes from bug report. It does not come from your code, right? Code coverage can tell you whether people are writing tests or not, but we do not have any metric. There is something called mutation test. You can go and check that, but that is not under the scope of what we are going to talk about now. So I'm just trying to address the coverage related question here, right? So we'll proceed further and see where it takes us. So what we have done so far is we have introduced you to the test pyramid, and we have basically showed you that, oh, we already have a test suite and everything is good, right? So we have done a test pyramid demo as well. Over to Kiran now.
Okay. Now we have maintained the test pyramid till now. Now that we have got a new requirement, to add a delete button. So here is the functionality. So whenever I click on the delete button, I want that entire row to be deleted. You saw the questions, right? One after the other. I want a delete button right next to the card. And when I click on the delete button, I want the whole row to be deleted. This is the requirement. Now, while implementing this requirement, how do I maintain my test pyramid? Right? That is the question. So we will try to see practically how we are going to do that. Now, where to start? So let us say we got the requirement, right? The requirement is, when I click on the delete button, I want the whole row to be deleted. What I will do, I'll take this requirement and write a test for it. So point to be noted is I have not started writing any production code here. I'm writing only, I'm writing a test directly for the requirement. So, and that test, I will call it as a acceptance test. I know you might have some question, just hold that thought. So one is I have written a test right now for the whole requirement. Now, what I'll do, I'll write another test. So, and I'll go a little deeper now. So the initial test I have written, the test I have written was for when I click on the button, I want the whole row to be deleted. I have converted this requirement into a test and I have written it. Now I'll go a little deeper. So now what I want to do, I'll write a test, something for when I call API from UI, I want this to happen. Or when I call DB through, from my front end, or if you have such, if you can split this requirement into such, what I'll call it as a integration test, right? And now I have written that requirement as integration test. And in the same way, I keep going deeper. I'll keep splitting the requirements. So now I have reached a point where I'm not able to, divide it further into requirements. So I've reached a point where I can write only in terms of production code, right? So now such kind of a test, I'll call it as a unit test. For example, when I call this function, I want X to be returned, right? So something like that, I'll call this as unit test. Let me repeat, let me come from the beginning. So what we got the requirement from the product owner, and the whole requirement I wrote it in a form of test, right? And this test I call it as acceptance test. Now I further split into I split this into more requirements. So now I'll write only one test picking up any one of them and call it as integration test, right? And for this integration test, I'll split further and I'll take one aspect of it and I'll call it as unit test. So till now, I have not written any production code. Till now, I've written only test, right?
So just to add to what Kiran said, right? The acceptance test for this scenario could be, I click on the delete button, the road vanishes. That is the acceptance test. Now, when you go deeper, the integration test level, it could be that when I call the delete API, the row should be deleted in the database. That could be one integration test. And another integration test could be, when I click on the delete button, the delete API should be called. Right? So these are two integration tests that we have created by going a little deeper into our system, because we now are getting into the system. We know what is the design of the existing system and all these things. So we know there is a API. You can express this existing requirement acceptance test 1 into some integration test. And like that, you go deeper, and you will reach a point where you will not be able to do anything except, writing it as a small requirement. The requirement is, okay, I have come to a point of my chain that if I call the function called delete, okay, it should return true. It has come to that level now. That could be a unit test, right? So go ahead. I just wanted to add to the test sequence.
So now what I'll do, I'll start writing my production code. And how much production code I'll write? I'll write only that much to pass my unit test and nothing else, right? I'll write only that much code to pass my unit test 1. So now my unit test is passed, right? Now since we need to divide the we already know that we need to divide this integration test into further unit test, right? So we write another unit test to to make sure we pass the integration test. So now again this unit test is failing right now. We'll write only that much of code to pass this unit test. And once we pass this unit test, our integration test is passed. Maybe we might have more number of unit tests to pass the integration test. So just an example, we have in our example, we were able to pass the integration test through only couple of unit tests. Similarly,
so in case you didn't notice, red color means failing test and green color is passing test.
Yeah,
that's the color coding that we took actually in this example.
Yeah. Similarly, we just continue the iteration until we pass the acceptance test, right? And now, any answer what this concept is called? Anybody have any idea? I mean, anybody heard of this kind of testing sometime back? Any answers? You can take a guess. Yes, TDD, close. Yeah, BDD. Test first. Okay, so in TDD, what happens? So we write the test first, and we write only the simplest possible code, and then we try to pass the test, and we move on to the next step. So here, what we did, we have written only one acceptance test, right? Even though we have written only one acceptance test, we are trying to pass this test, writing multiple tests. So this is also a TDD, but we call it as nested TDD or double loop TDD. There are different names, so we like to call it as nested TDD. All
so the core problem. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, all answers are more or less correct, but yeah, that's all. Yeah, Vivek, you can add on. Yes.
So the core problem that we're trying to solve is, you explain TDD to people, they get excited about it. Some people may not be excited. And when you talk about TDD, you speak only about one cycle, red, green, refactor, red, green, refactor, right? And most of the times it comes as unit test only. We will not talk about any other layer than unit. Whenever you go to a classic TDD workshop, you see red, green, refactor, small units you will do. Now, that advice of doing TDD in that way may not be helpful for a person who already has a product to deal with, right? For example, here you have to delete something. So unless you see exactly where the code has to change, you will not be able to write even a unit test, right? So this basically gives you an approach of where to start. Okay, I know TDD, but where do I start? People generally have to start from acceptance test level, which is at the business level. That is where, as Pallavi said, BDD helps, right? These acceptance tests can be written in the form of given, when, then. That using Cucumber, you can basically make it an acceptance test. That is where it starts, right? So whenever a new requirement comes, you cannot do TDD at a unit level, right? There are what we felt. We remember we spoke about the least discussed aspects, right? One of the least discussed aspects is, okay, now I know TDD. How do I implement it in my code? People generally get stuck because the next user story they are picking up, they will not get a unit test, and nobody will be able to write a unit test because nobody has gone deeper into that level of code. So this provides you this nested TDD or multi-loop TDD or double loop TDD. The double loop TDD is a more common term, is a good way to start, where you start with acceptance test, which is you can do write acceptance test in a given, when you are actually refining your product backlog. That time itself you can write. And when you start writing when you start implementing the story, a tester and developer, or even a person, or even if two developers, they can sit together. One person can write integration test, right, while other person writes unit test and code. Or there are other styles like ping pong development. You can google on ping pong. That's another homework for you. So what we try to address is the gap between the common conference knowledge of what is TDD, how to do it, and okay, now I got a user story, how do I even get started with TDD? That gap was not there, not filled in many of the talks that I went to. So we thought, okay, we will create a conference talk that explains that gap in a nice way and guides people in the direction, so that tomorrow in your office, when not tomorrow, whenever you go to office next, you can basically take your user story and start applying this framework and get the benefits of whatever the test pyramid creates. That's the idea. Okay, let's go further.
So yeah, I'll just summarize what we did till now. So we got a new requirement, and our main objective was to maintain the pyramid, right? Test pyramid. So for that we wrote first acceptance test and then integration test, and then we wrote some unit tests for it. So now if you see, have we maintained a pyramid? We have 4 new unit tests and 2 new integration tests and only 1 acceptance test. Right. So if you see this overall, we have still maintained the pyramid. So yeah, that's all. Yeah, we'll go to you now.
Okay. So we'll proceed further. Now that we spoke about all these test pyramid and how to maintain the test pyramid when a new requirement comes, all these things we speak. But then there is always this DevOps person who asks, okay, all these things are fine. Your demos are always showing only, black screen terminal demos, and what our leadership will want or what our release manager will want is something that you can directly integrate with Jenkins. The idea is we can integrate this Jenkins. Can next slide, Kiran. So what we have given you in the source code in the GitHub repository that we are going to share is Jenkins files, which you can directly take and use in your projects if you are having an NPM kind of a stack. Okay, so you can directly see, and there is a separate, you can basically integrate it within your Jenkins in a pipeline fashion or in a separate build fashion or whatever, and all these things are possible. And what we have given you is basically Jenkins file, which you can directly give to anybody who is taking care of your Jenkins, and they can take care of running these tests in whatever frequency you want and whatever stages you want in your build pipeline. That is always taken care of. So you have a sample, and we will give you the GitHub repository link. So okay. Okay, can we go further? So this is pretty much what we had in our talk. So we will probably see a summary of what takeaways we wanted you to take, right? So the first thing is test pyramid, right? That is one thing you took away, that right? Second thing is the concept of nested TDD. Okay, how do you start with TDD but also start at the level of requirements? That is a nested TDD. The tree kind of a thing that Kiran explained, that is one. And Jenkins configuration you will take away from the source code, and source code is in this link. If you see, right, maybe you can you can choose to take a screenshot, or maybe what I can do is while if the questions are being asked, I can drop a link in the chat window so that you can take and use that in your projects, right? So that is pretty much what we had, right? So now we are open for questions.
So, hi everybody. We enjoyed the session. I'm sure you did too. To be honest, I did not know that we could have an interactive session in a conference like this. So, thank you both of you. I really enjoyed. Well, this is your
Thanks to the audience. They were
absolutely wonderful audience we had. Now, people, this is your chance to ask any questions you have to these two people. So, please put your questions in the chat window and we'll take them up. Thanks, Munish, but that's not a question. Anybody? Yeah. Thanks, Vivek, for the link. What are the popular XP practices?
Yes, so this is basically, the most popular, if you see XP. The first thing that got extremely popular was TDD, which we explained, just the red green refactor part, not the double loop TDD. Of course, that can be thought of as an extension to XP philosophy. And the second most popular thing is continuous integration, right? And there are other non-technical XP practices as well. For example, this user story that you are writing, and the concept of customer and the concept of co-located teams, lot of things which Scrum took, those are actually present in XP. And there is a cool site that talks about a lot of XP practices. Maybe I'll just pull it up and put it in the chat box so that you can take it from there. I hope that's okay, right? I'll just try to find out that site and put it in the chat box.
Absolutely fine. People, do ask your questions. I think you have all enjoyed the session. Put your feedback into the polls. How does TDD approach impact application scalability? Very interesting question.
When I'm assuming that scalability is about, how many people can access this software at the same time. It could be that kind of scalability, or it could be scalability as in like how many, for example, features can we create in a specific time. What is the speed at which we can churn, features? Okay, it's about scaling to new features. Good. So the impact is very clear, right? So the impact is, it is easy for you to scale your software because you already have a set of regression tests that you can bank on, right? You don't have to go do guesswork. You don't have to do manual regression test every time. There is a nice automated test suite already available for you, which you can suit to your own risk appetite. For example, all your developers, right, can run their unit test in their own system. And if you are much of a person who doesn't want your developer to do it directly, you can use, there is a concept called pre-commit hooks. Just do a research on it. A developer can run those things. Without that, a commit will not happen in Git if you're using Git, right? And this basically makes sure that any errors are caught early on. That is the biggest advantage to scalability, right? Your application scales fast if you catch errors fast. Otherwise, your scalability becomes a problem. So basically, you're trying to reduce the time which it takes between the introduction of the bug and catching of the bug. Thereby, integration problems are also taken care of when you run the integration tests. And this is how it affects the scalability. But I don't know whether I answered your question, or I did a lot of blah blah, whether I don't know whether it is useful to you or not. So I would expect, I think Nikhil gave the question. Did I answer, or I don't know? You just can ask if there is any question that's specific. Okay. How do we follow TDD practices? Please suggest frameworks, tutorial for unit integration, and E2E testing for Node.js and Angular. Okay, so TDD practices, how do you say? It's frameworks are one part of it. For example, if you're into Java world, JUnit. If you're into, NPM world, there is a Karma, Mocha, Chai kind of a stack. There is a tool called Karma. There is a tool called Mocha. There is a tool called Chai, and they make a nice, combination, right? And Angular, I think you have Protractor, if I'm not wrong. Protractor comes with Angular, which helps you to do E2E testing. Now, how do we follow TDD practice is a deeper question and a loaded question. It starts with the change of mindset, and it starts with management allowing people to start with tests. Sometimes people think of unit tests as additional cost. So they'll say, first write the code, show the demo, then write the tests. Right? That's the attitude that we generally see. So following TDD is not just a developer thing, though it can start from a developer level, but also we need management support. We need people who can actually go and talk to management and get their support in order to do TDD. Otherwise, you can start somewhere, but it will not be a widespread practice, and then it will die down. That's what at least I have seen in my career. So that's one.
Hari also has a good question. Do you have more time?
Yeah, just last question. So I think we'll take Hari's question as last one.
You want to attempt it, Kiran?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. So team always says that TDD takes more time, but they're fine with unit testing. What is your view on that? Okay. So TDD takes more time, as in, so the biggest problems that I see, right? If I list down problems or my experience based on this particular sentence, right? When they say unit testing, more often than not, people think of unit testing as a manual unit testing. I will just test my story and call it unit testing. I've seen people like that, right? And there are some mature teams which say, I'll write JUnits, but after writing the code, okay? And team always says that TDD takes more time because when you say what takes more time, right? It is not just about how amount of work that you do, but it also needs the transparency that you give to other people, right? If you always feel like you are being watched, it sounds like more effort to you, and TDD tends to create that impression that you're always being watched, right? Particularly when you say TDD is going to be done as pair programming, you're always exposing your own vulnerabilities to some other person. That puts a enormous stress on the developer, so they will do whatever is in their power to push back. That is one thing. But then the idea is the question seems to be around how do we convince developers to do that, right? The way to convince developers to do that is to talk about how they will try to solve problems around bugs, right? How can they avoid bugs from happening, right? And then try to point them in a direction where where they can do that. And even if they do not want to do TDD, right, there are other things. You can just start with test first. Doing it gradually is one way, right? Okay, let's try writing tests first and then write code, not even TDD, one after another, right? That's another way to look at it. I don't know if I told more things or confused you.
No, it was a really nice answer, at least for those of us who come from the background of testing. I sincerely enjoyed your answer, and it cleared a lot of misconceptions about TDD taking double the time. So thank you so much. I'm sure all of us enjoyed, and the questions will keep on coming for next 2 hours if we want to. So, but there is a time box we have to respect because we all have next sessions to go to. So both Vivek and Kiran, thank you so much. And I'm not speaking only from my side or from Scrum Alliance, but I'm sure I'm speaking of the 60 plus people who have taken whole 1 hour to listen to you. That itself tells you were good. So thank you so much. So with this, we would like to close the session here. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody, please vote. There is a poll. Please tell that you enjoyed the session. Thank you so much.